Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the One Hub Racing YouTube channel. It is the turn of the Precision tier to take centre stage here for round 5 of season 17 around the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache here in the home of many classic title deciders in the past. It is, of course, the Brazilian Grand Prix. My name is Jake. Unfortunately, my regular co-commentator Craig cannot be here this evening, but in his absence, I'm delighted to be joined by Liam. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing good. It is great to be back in the comms box. It's been a while. I think my last gig was qualifying night, I think. But other than that, it's been a while.
It's good to have you here as well. And before we get stuck into qualifying action here tonight, we'll have a quick recap of what happened last week. So it was Jay Fletcher that took the win in the Precision tier, with Ryoma Hoshi taking second. Cloudy Balloons for anyone who's confused. Hindle is in third. Before I just recap the rest of the results quickly, you probably noticed already we have rain in qualifying. So as always, gods looking over Brazil have decided to mix things up even more. So an extra challenge for our drivers tonight. Yeah, quickly, Chris was fourth. Knowlesy completed the top 5. And one interesting thing that certainly came out of the stewards' findings was that Catboy Key, who had initially finished 6th, got a 5-second penalty for colliding with Rimpe. Now, you'd think 5-second penalty from 6th, he probably stays in the points, especially with it being a top 12 at one hub. Nope, he actually dropped completely out the points with that 5-second penalty. So, as 5-second penalties go, that's quite a severe one to get.
Yeah, definitely quite a severe one, especially if the field is that close as it was last week. But I don't think I caught the race last week. But if you're saying he's dropped out of the points, it must be extremely close to this field.
Yeah, it does tend to be that way. I mean, in terms of a championship, it's starting to look a bit spread out. We've got Jay Fletcher, who has an 18-point lead over Tom Robbo in second, with Knowlesy 5 points behind Tom in third. But the main reason I think why Tom Robbo is actually struggling 18 points behind Jay Fletcher is not because he's any less quick than Jay Fletcher, because I don't think he is, but in qualifying he's really struggled. He really struggles to get a good grid spot, and it's really impacted him in recent races. Could you put your mind around it, why someone who's so quick just can't seem to get it together for one lap in qualifying?
Well, I think it's just down to certain people, really. I think some people are better in the race than they are in qualifying, like myself, to be honest. This season, I've definitely found that I've been quicker in races than in qualifying, so it just depends, really, because it's a lot different to getting that one quick lap in compared to managing your pace over the course of a race, so yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, and if he can start to recover his qualifying performances, there's no reason why he can't play a big part in this title fight. Of course, we're around 5 of 10, so we're getting towards that sort of halfway stage of a championship now. And it's really where you start to work out where you are in the running order of things. And you really want to be in the sharp end of a championship now, because if you're already playing catch-up, it's going to be very tough to recover it from here onwards. I'm on board with Scorpions. He's starting his first lap in this wet qualifying session. It'll be interesting to see how the red weather develops over the next 15 minutes. But the fact that it's already quite busy out on track suggests that the drivers aren't expecting it to dry up anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely. If it's not going to dry out anytime soon, you're wanting to get as many laps in as possible to get as much grip into that circuit as you can, especially in the wet tyres, because most drivers all of these drivers are definitely not coming out for just the one lap, as Jonas puts it on provisional pole for the moment with a 1:17.9. And as I say that, Jay Fletcher goes almost 2.5 seconds quicker with a 15.5. So yeah, it's all about getting as much rubber down on the track as possible right now, rather than pushing out for a fast lap time.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Jay Fletcher looks like he's got up to speed straight away with that 1:15.5. Scorpion's going to slot in to second, albeit a second off the outright pace. So I'm going to go on board with Tom Robbo, who's just finishing his first lap, and maybe the changing conditions in qualifying might play into his hands slightly. He's got a lot of support in the stream. And just quickly as well, Schnitzel, one of the drivers racing here tonight, has revealed in the chat that the start of the race will be dry, but it is going to start to rain towards the end. That just sounds like typical Brazil weather to me.
Yeah, it's pretty much Brazil weather. I mean, come on. What else would you expect from Brazil than crazy weather? It's proven over the year that it's the home of crazy weather, to be honest.
Yeah, and it is actually one of a few counterclockwise tracks on the calendar, which always fascinates me. We've only actually got a few of those on the calendar. And, I mean, speaking of unpredictable weather, of course, who can forget 2008, the infamous is that Glock moment where Lewis Hamilton stole the title from Felipe Massa right at the last. It seems to be a track that a lot of both fans and drivers alike see as really popular. I mean, I don't know if you personally like it, but what do you think it is that makes Interlagos such a favourite with drivers and fans?
I think the thing that Interlagos is, it's always really close in qualifying, and the middle sector is quite difficult during the race, especially for dirty air, but you've got that long back straight, the long run up to the line in first corner, which can really help you if you've got the slipstream and your ERS to really catch up and maybe launch it into turn 1 through the set of S's, or if you're patient, you wait until the next DRS straight and send it into the left-hander. So it's quite exciting for both racing and qualifying, so I think that's why it's so popular.
And it's going to make setting up the car a real challenge for his drivers tonight. I'm on board with Schnitzel, who's just coming through the middle part of a lap right now. I believe he's just gone through the Pinarino, and he's going to come up to Young Xiao very shortly. I may butcher his pronunciations, I apologise if there are any Brazilians watching. But yeah, Schnitzel was actually talking in the build-up to this as he nearly loses it up the hill. It just shows the difference in conditions. Corners that usually you don't really notice in the dry, but Schnitzel nearly losing it there up to the run to the line, and actually did really well to hold on to it in the end. He actually mentions that he wasn't hoping for rain because he runs no assists, and he believes that will put him at a disadvantage compared to others if it is raining, so he's one driver that could potentially struggle in these conditions.
Oh yeah, definitely. The gap between assists and running no assists is like crazy. Even if you're running medium traction control, you get so much more grip compared to those running no traction control, especially in the wet, so it's going to be interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on those running no assists as to how well they do compared to those running assists.
Absolutely. It looks like as well Rimpe's already crashed out. That looks like that was also on the run to the line. So his qualifying's over. He actually mentioned that Brazil's one of his best tracks on the game, so he's maybe another one that's not liking the fact that the skies have opened above us, as Catboy Key runs up to the line and moves up to 10th place on a 16.4, but it is still Jay Fletcher that leads the way at the moment, and I believe he actually improved on his initial lap by a tenth, so showing some good pace early on. We're a 3/10 gap back to Chris and PB Racing.
Yep, I think it's going to, we're in for a tight qualifying between, well, the top 5 at the moment, because they're all in and about each other right now, so with 10 minutes to go, I think we won't really see people's true pace until maybe 3-4 minutes to go. That's when people start putting the foot to the floor, but I think people are still getting to grips with the track and the weather.
And potentially with the threat of rain in the race, I do wonder if it might come into some drivers' minds about saving a fresh set of inters for the race.
Oh yeah, definitely. Depending on how heavy the rain gets, and well, when it comes, to be honest, because we know it's coming, we just don't know when. So that's going to play a big part as well. If these guys, when the rain is going to come, if it's going to come after their first stop, or after their second stop, maybe.
That's going to be absolutely crucial. I wonder if we'll see maybe some drivers delaying their second stop, ready for rain, and just switching on to intermediates, because you'd be a severe disadvantage if you make 2 dry stops and then have to pit again for a set of intermediates or wets. So we could see the rain here could play a huge part in the way this race unfolds, and tyre wear itself on dry tyres isn't a big issue around here. Two-stop's pretty straightforward. You can pretty much just push to the end on whatever tyres take your fancy. Tyre wear's not that bad around here.
Yeah, well, speaking from personal experience, I found it a bit challenging, but it certainly is manageable with tyre wear. That's because with the two-stop, you're only really getting maybe around 50% if you're lucky. Well, 50% probably on tyre wear most of the time, so it's not too bad.
If you're looking at past Brazil racers here at One Hub and see maybe who has a bit of form coming into tonight, Chris, who's currently on the front row of the grid, he actually got pole in season 15 the last time One Hub raced here. And there is another driver as well, if I can find it. Yeah, Riley Buys, who's currently down in 13th. He actually won the podium tier season 15 when it took place. That was actually the final race of the season. And not too surprising, I suppose. It's actually slightly strange in a way to have Brazil at this point of the season, as PB Racing moves up to second, just a 10th off Jay Fletcher. So a nice improvement from him there. And he's shown pretty well so far.
Yeah, going back to what you're saying, has Brazil ever been this early in the season? Or has it always been reserved for later in the season?
I mean, I'm not too sure in terms of like the past one of seasons. Obviously, it was the season 15 finale, but obviously back talking old school Formula One days, we had Brazil as actually one of the early rounds. I seem to remember. We're talking back the days where Suzuka was the finale. Personally speaking, Suzuka or Interlagos is a much better finale than Abu Dhabi, but that's another topic for another day.
Yeah, we don't want to get too deep into that discussion because that opens a can of worms we don't want to discuss right now. Maybe at a later date. But G Fletcher looks to have gone even faster. He's improved by 2 tenths on his lap.
And he's up again, not by much, but he's up again, so he's absolutely revelling in these conditions. Although he's had a massive tank slapper out of Jung Sao as he was just beginning to climb up the hill, and that corner really is the ultimate sign sometimes that corners you don't recognise in the dry suddenly become big challenges in the wet.
I mean, it can be a challenge in the dry as well. If you take too much of that inside curb, it does unsettle the car, so it's not too much of an issue in the dry, but in the wet it's certainly going to cause a lot of problems for people who aren't paying attention.
Now you may notice we only have 17 drivers tonight, and it was actually McLaren who got called into the team press conference, with Precision being a main focus of that conversation. And they actually said that they were hoping for a race win, and I don't know, maybe the curse of the media day striking, because neither McLaren driver is here tonight. So they've had a good start to the constructors up in third, but they ain't going to be making any progress this evening, unfortunately. And they've got Racing Point behind them, who certainly in the hands of Tom, Robbo and Catboy Key look a huge threat.
Yeah, and maybe they've just been scared into just not turning up. Maybe they were just maybe the pressure got to them a bit much, maybe, and they decided not to show, but who knows.
In Brazil in these conditions, McLaren should be used to that sort of thing, but hopefully we'll get to see what they can do at Baku next week, as Ryoma Hoshi comes across the line to complete another flying lap and moves up to 8th place into the 1:15s. There's just 5 minutes to go in qualifying, and while we've got a few drivers out there, it's pretty quiet at this point, so I just want to give a big thank you to some of One Hub sponsors, Next Level Racing, who will be providing rigs to the Going Gets Tough award winner, and you can actually follow them on Twitter at NextLVL Racing. And we've also got Liam13, who is sponsoring the trophies once again this year, and if you want to catch him on Twitch, you can do so at twitch.tv/LiamRBS, so a massive thank you to both of them.
Taking you back into the action, it's still quite quiet on track, so
yeah, we've got Chris just winding up for a lap. He's just entered sector 2 now as he goes through the Ferradura corners, and now turn 8, which is Laranja, and now through coming up towards turn 9, which is Pinarino. and then you come up to Bica de Pato, which is turn 10. Migulio is quite a... It's usually pretty straightforward in the drive, but can be very challenging in the wet, and now plunging down the hill towards Yongshao. Important corner to get right here as you build up now towards a run towards the line, and then it's just these small little kinks now. Be careful not to catch too much of a curve in these conditions, because that will unsettle the car. But here comes Chris across the line now to go into provisional pole. No, not quite. I thought he was about to get provisional pole position, but he just misses out by 10 thousandths of a second. But he slots into second, and that pace he showed to get pole back in season 15 here at Brazil really showing up once again as he goes just 10 thousandths behind Jay Fletcher, who is right now remains in the pits, obviously looking for the optimum time to go out on track, as Hindle now moves up to 4. And so far, at least, we've only lost 2 drivers in qualifying due to crashes, which is Verheyen and Rimpe, and that's going to be a huge blow for them. But I wouldn't be surprised when the drivers, certainly in these last few minutes, really push the limits. Wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see a couple more incidents.
Yeah, I think we might see a few spinners in these last few minutes. Nothing major, though. We'll just have a few spins, I think, but with 2.5 minutes to go now, I think the pressure's really on these guys at the front to get pole.
And one driver who potentially the pressure's really on is Tom Robbo, down in 13th. We mentioned at the start, his qualifying performances are really affecting the amount of points he's been able to collect so far. He's still second in the championship, but he's got the pace to challenge Jay Fletcher. But right now, down in 13th, he's just invalidated his latest lap. I wonder, is Tom's qualifying curse striking once again?
Well, there's enough time for him to get another lap in. The question is, does he have enough fuel?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, usually in the wet, you'd probably put a fuel in for 2 flying laps because you can afford to do so. Hopefully, he's got the fuel in that car to do one more effort, as we've got Riley Buys currently in 14th as he wrestles with the car out of Yongshao. Once again, picking up traction on the exit of that corner is proving to be a real problem for some of these drivers. Riley comes up to the line and stays 14th.
Yeah, just having a quick look at the task system here, and it says Tom Robbo has around about 2 laps of fuel remaining, so he can go for this one last flying lap. So keep an eye on him for now, because we'll see where he ends up, as well as all the others. Who's currently going? Who looks to be pushed across the line?
Well, Chris is invalidated. We've got Jay Fletcher, who is just starting a lap. Strangely enough, I think Tom Robbo actually might be one of the next ones.
Has crossed the line and is ever so close. 100 off pole.
Ooh, that's a very good effort from Chris, and yeah, he's towards the final corner, through the last few kinks now, and this, I mean, he's got enough, might have enough fuel to do one more effort after this, but this is his next lap as Jonas moves up to 11th. What can Tom Robbo do across the line? It's a 60. Yes. It's just not happening for him. Is he still pushing on for his next lap? I'm not too sure. No, he's not. He's gone wide off the track, so that's his qualifying done, and 13th's the best it's going to be, but Jay Fletcher's absolutely flying once again. Is he about to break into the 1:14 on his latest lap? Yes, he is. Yes, a 14.8. Great effort from him. We have
Scorpion coming through the final corner now on the run up to the line. He's going to have slipstream from Casper in front of him, so keep an eye on where he's going to finish. He's going to maximise that slipstream. Here he comes up to the line. What time is it going to be? It's going to be a 1:15.2, and it's P3 and P2 for the Ferraris.
Nice stuff there. Chris did improve right at the end, but it wasn't by enough. In fact, if Jay Fletcher hadn't have improved his time, he'd have been 1,000th off him. So, in a way, he might be kind of glad that Jay Fletcher improved, because that would have been an agonising amount to miss out by. Kajman now was 5th. He's going to go across the line, stays 5th, does improve his time slightly.
Here comes Nick. I'm not sure if he's on a flying lap or not. Up comes to the line, and it doesn't improve just. You
stays
have the
6th.
Alfa Romeo coming up to the line as well, and then the Renault and Tom Robbo are coming. Renault's running up to the
Schnitzel,
line.
nice lap from Schnitzel, goes 5th.
And the Renault stays, finishes 13th. Tom Robbo comes into the pit. He should have just crossed the line, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Tom Robbo. It's another qualifying session where it just hasn't worked out for him. But it's Jay Fletcher on pole, and I have to say, he was just a star man throughout that entire qualifying session. He always seemed to be on top, and he just kept improving that time. Whenever challenges came towards him, he just pulled that extra few tenths ahead. He really looked formidable in that session.
Yeah, he was flying through that qualifying session there. The second somebody got close to him, he was in there with another lap time just to keep himself safe.
So here's the grid then. Jay Fletcher takes pole. We've got Chris in 2nd, Scorpion 3rd. Great result for Ferrari there. PB Racing takes 4th. We've got Schnitzel starting 5th. Kajman takes 6th. We've got Nick in 7th. Hindle in 8th. The top 10 completed by Catboy Key and Ryoma Hoshi. We've got Riley Buys in 11th. Jonas is in 12th. Okeke 13th. Tom Robbo will need another brilliant comeback in the race. He starts 14th. Casper in 15th, and 2 Finns in Verheyen and Rimpe crashing out in qualifying, fortunately for them, which means they will start right from the back of a grid. And it's quite an unusual sight in changing conditions to see 3 Finns at the back of a grid. That's usually where you can see some Finnish drivers really shine with their rallying experience.
I was about to say, usually the Finns have experience with the crazy weather, so keep an eye on them.
In terms of this race then, certainly if you were a driver in it, how would you set up the car with the threat of rain later on? Would you go fully dry, or would you sort of put a setup on that prepares you for any conditions?
If I was one of the drivers, I'd be checking my race strategy almost immediately to find out when the rain is coming, so you can adjust the setup ahead of time.
Absolutely, I think it's really going to be a case of thinking on their feet during this race, because you never know with this game. The rain can sort of come at any time, and you never really know the severity of it either. Sometimes it can wash out the track in a lap or two, and the next minute it can sometimes fall for 5-6 laps before you need to do anything. So it's just a case of drivers thinking on their feet as PB Racing hopefully can rejoin. He has just lost connection. I know he's been having a few internet issues lately, so that would be a real shame if he can't join in time for the race. I think he'll have a minute or two, thankfully, with the outlap, which should help. In terms of the dry tyres here, you've got the hardest compounds, C3, C2 and C1. And of course, due to wet qualifying, drivers can start on whatever tyre they want. So I expect here we're going to see a few different strategies. Probably the softer mediums are probably going to be the preferred tyres to start on.
I'm expecting to see a lot of mediums at the start of this race, simply because of the wet weather. So I think a lot of drivers will want to get the harder compounds out of the way as soon as possible.
That is a good point, and it's going to be an interesting one. Of course, with the mediums as well, you got flexibility as well to potentially run long into the race if you're thinking that the rain's going to maybe potentially go a bit earlier. Obviously, Jeff will keep the drivers fully informed about what's happening. In terms of stewards coming into this race, I did mention a couple of things. If we do go under safety car conditions, which I know in the prospect here didn't happen, but if it does happen here, just got to be careful and no dangerous or slow driving. Otherwise that might potentially be penalised. And just being patient when making moves. There has been a few incidents reported lately where maybe being a bit optimistic with moves, and hopefully today we won't see anything like that. I'm sure we'll see a lot of great racing though, because this is one of those tracks where it's one of those tracks really where you can almost go side by side through turn 12 all the way up to sort of turn 3 or turn 4, depending on how obviously you're the guy against you's racing.
How brave you are, really.
Yeah, you've got to have real nerve to hold it that long.
To my surprise, I'm seeing quite a lot of softs.
Yeah, the
So
majority of drivers going for softs, which again, like you, I'm a bit surprised by. I'm not surprised to see that nobody's gone for the hards, but I am
no,
surprised.
I think the hards are just saved for incidents on the first couple of laps as just an option to get you to near the end of the race.
So everyone's on softs with the exception of Scorpion, Kajman, Ryoma Hoshi, Okeke, and Casper. So that's a 12-5 split in favour of the soft tyres. Now, I've got to be honest, I probably expected that to be 12-5 in favour of mediums.
Yeah,
So,
I'm with you there. I'm surprised it's this way. Not seeing a lot of massive gaps on the formation lap, like I've been seeing in prospect tier and other tiers as well, where people like to leave nice big gaps on the formation lap.
no, all staying very close up together, so that'll certainly benefit Jay Fletcher out front. He won't have as long to wait on the grid for everyone else to line up. And it's going to be interesting to see, certainly those near the front that are starting on mediums, what they can do in those opening few laps. And will they potentially become a stumbling block for those on softs behind them? But we've got all the cars lining up now, and we've got 36 laps in front of us. And who is going to be able to... Can anyone stop Jay Fletcher and potentially take this win away? But he's got a long race to go.
We are about to find out once everybody is happy on the grid and we can begin the countdown to the start of the race any minute now.
Yeah, the light's just taking a little while to get with us, but we should be very close to lights out here. I hope this will not help the nerves of anyone who potentially either is susceptible to them or is in a very high position, because the longer you have to wait, I think the more you start thinking about the possibilities in the race. But it does look like we're having a potential issue with the lights here, so what's that going to do to the guys on the front row especially? Is that going to play in their minds as they wait for the race to start?
I think it plays in everybody's minds, especially if you're that high up the field. It's going to be an issue for, well, it's going to play on your mind quite a bit, to be honest. Like, what am I going to be able to get off to a good start? When are the lights going out? Is it going to take a while for them to go? Are they going to go quickly? What about the guy next to me on the start? What about the guy behind me? So there's a lot to think about.
And my game has blue screened.